When I ask Italians who were here in 1933 about Italo Balbo, their faces light up. If I'm talking to them on their phone, you can hear the tone of their voice change. What their recollections all have in common is a sense of pride. Balbo defined a new meaning to what Italian was, and seeing 24 hydroplanes cross the Atlantic safely was more than a historical event. It told people that the modern world was closer. Guglielmo Marconi had brought the world closer through voice. Now, Balbo's voyage signaled another way to communicate quicker. The air fleet brought Da Borminda de los Barba up first, and that was an airmail letter from Italy, which you can see in one of our showcases. It was Friday, July 14th, 1933. Alessandro Biffi was a young boy. He was standing on the sidewalk in Outremont, looking up, hoping to catch a glimpse of the flying boats. When I spoke to him, he fondly remembered having a Savoia Marchetti toy airplane just like Balbo's. Cars and buses had been arriving all morning in Longueuil. A radio crew set up to broadcast the event live across the Dominion. Dignitaries, top hats, military men, and diplomats came from across Canada. The Italians were there in full force to greet their countrymen. Standing room was at a premium. A few people had made some promotional Balbo hats, and they were selling those to the crowd. Thousands of Montrealers were at the pier, anxiously awaiting to hear a music that they had never heard before. And shortly after 12 noon, the sky began to whir. 24 seaplanes in triangular formation began to appear. The Italian band started to play. Ocean liners that had been dressed for the occasion set off their sirens, and cars were honking. The crowd just cheered and cheered. Romano Salvadori was there, and his father, Luciano, had drove in from Lachine. Romano remembers how that day was very windy, and how the planes cut through the waves, through the water as they landed. When Balbo arrived at the pier, rather than using the steps that had been placed there for his convenience, the youthful air minister, as he was described by the press, jumped onto the landing. His body language spoke volumes. That one motion told everyone he was young, energetic, and strong. He walked like a general, but he had the casual air of a friend. Silvio Narizzano's daughter, Yola, had stepped forth to hand Balbo red roses tied with ribbons in the Italian colors. Balbo had this contagious smile. This photo tells us a lot about Balbo's personality, because in this photo you can see the effect that he had on others. If you think about photos that you have from that era, everyone is uptight and serious. Yet here we see people actually laughing. Commendatore Alfredo Sebastiani, which is here on the left, he had already met Balbo in Italy on a previous trip, and you could see he's certainly enjoying the moment. Balbo's schedule in Montreal was truly jet set, even before this word had ever been invented. He was a celebrity. He left Longueuil. He was whisked away to Dominion Square downtown, where he had to lay a wreath at the Soldiers' Monument. That same afternoon, there was a celebration for him in Fletcher's Field. The crew stayed at the Mount Royal Hotel on Peel Street, and the first thing that Balbo wanted to do when he got there was to phone his wife and the kids in Rome and his mother in Ferrara. A wireless line was set up through the Canadian Marconi Company. Now this made news. The Italian general was very public about being a good husband, a good father, and a good son. With barely any time to rest, he was brought to Montreal City Hall, where he participated in a ceremony and signed the Golden Book. Remember, this guy had just flown in and was being brought everywhere. As the general went back to the hotel, People along the route were shouting, "Viva l'Italia, viva Balbo!" At 6:30, he had a press conference in his room while a barber trimmed his beard and a manicurist did his nails. The newspaper men loved him. At one point, Balbo questions a man who was wearing a goatee without a mustache. This event also made news, but more importantly, it was putting into evidence the Italian man's preoccupation with aesthetics and grooming. The evening began with a banquet and a ball at the Mount Royal Hotel. Balbo intended to stay only an hour because he had to leave the next day and wanted to get some sleep. A girl asked him to sign a menu, and then everyone followed suit. Among the guests were the Consul General, Canadian ministers, generals, and prominent Italians. In this close-up up here, we see the artists Guido Nincheri, and to his left is Vincenzo Poggi. Nincheri also designed a page for the program, and a few years earlier, Nincheri had painted Italo Balbo in the fresco of the apse of Madonna della Difesa Church, standing next to Guglielmo Marconi. That same night, there was another banquet organized by the Italians, and this was at the Queen's Hotel, which used to be on Peel Street. Domenico Carbone's father, Ricciotto, attended that event, and he made sure that he had the aviators sign the program. Each of the courses on the menu had names that evoked Italianità. A journalist asked Balbo if he was tired, and to which he replied, "I'm tired of receptions, I'm not tired of flying."